Hey everybody, I want to talk about some albums today that I've been really that have kind of become staples of my youth, but also I still spin these albums today. And I'm going to talk about Fold Zandura, their Ultraforever album, 1997 on BEC Recordings. Now, this is an album I've mentioned this on the show before, but I got into this band because I really loved the album Invincible by Skillet. 2012 of all times. I was really enjoying that album. I loved how it had like the kind of the industrial feel. Probably didn't even know that it was called that at the time, but I loved the industrial feel on it. I loved like all the synth hooks that kind of tie all the verse and choruses together. It was even at the time I knew it was pretty dated, but I found the music infectious, and there's some really impactful songs on that album for me. So I remember, I think I was reading an Amazon review for Invincible, and somebody in one of the comments or something said, hey, like, this reminds me of Fold Zandura's Ultraforever. And I thought, okay, who's Fold Zandura? What is this? So I looked him up, and I happened to have Spotify at the time, so I looked up Fold Zandura, and I saw that they had this album called Ultraforever. And at the time, that was the only album they had. I didn't know anything else about the band, but I knew they were kind of in that Christian music wheelhouse, so I went ahead and, listened to their song. I think the first song I listened to was a song called Stormy Hill. And if you've heard the song, it kind of just comes in with that wash, and it's got these big, loud chords and the and then I love the way it goes into the verses. It's got this really kind of calming, peaceful feel, and then there's that Bear the Weight chorus, and I love the mix of kind of the slow to the big build, and it's a very dynamic track. And I was hooked. I mean, that was the kind of melody I was looking for. I loved the feel, and it pretty much sent me on a whole like rabbit hole of looking at Fold Zandura music. I looked them up on YouTube, and I found the Return album. Eventually I found King Planet. Another great song by them is like Rubies. To me, someday maybe I'll try to compile like my top 10 Fold Zandura songs, because they're a band that I think is very interesting, and Gyro. So there's three guys in the band, obviously. There's Gyro, Zahn, Jerome Fontamilis, and Frank Lenz. That was the lineup on this Ultraforever album. But I think it's primarily been Gyro has done a lot of different groups. I believe his name is Gyro. That's his name that he goes by, and he's got this really unique style of using kind of opaque imagery, things that maybe don't, if you try to map them out what he's actually saying, they're more impressionistic kind of in a way with his lyricism. But his guitars, he's using a lot of electronics, but using a lot of distortion, his musical. And I don't want to just say that this is Gyro's band, because Jerome is very much a part of this band too. And I think they actually tied their roots back to a band called Mortal, which is very industrial, a lot more heavy than what they were doing in Fold Zandura. Fold Zandura was kind of like Mortal, but they had a little more of a pop-forward sensibility. And I probably lean towards Fold Zandura. I just love when they have a little more melody. Don't get me wrong, some of those Mortal songs are great, and I haven't actually done a full discog run on Mortal, so that's something worthy to do. Because even on those Mortal albums, they had tracks that were a little more spacious and had more of kind of a pop influence. Great example of that is the album Wake. To me, that's my favorite Mortal album, because it's kind of a precursor of what Fold Zandura would be. And honestly, I don't know why they why they changed their name to Fold, if that was something to do with the business. Because Mortal, I believe, was it Narrow Path Records? No, not Narrow Path Records. It was Frontline Records, I think. And I think maybe Gyro wanted to do something with Brandon Ebel of Tooth and Nail. And Brandon was starting up this side label called BEC Recordings, and that was supposedly more for artists he thought could maybe get a little bigger and be more mainstream. And what's funnily enough is a lot of those Tooth and Nail bands, some of those bands got pretty big in the non-Christian market. So I do think, to me, Fold Zandura feels more like a Tooth and Nail band to me. I feel like it's one of those bands where I think if you know this type of music, And I didn't even grow up in the 90s. I don't know what month Ultra Forever came out, but there's a good chance I wasn't even born. I was born in June of 97. But all that to say, this album really does resonate with me because it's got a continuous, when you listen to the songs, you're like, this is definitely their own thing, but there's so much variety. I mean, there's a song called Samovar, which has this cryptic lyricism about like Saturnines and the Sea of Crete, and I mean, the lyrics kind of have this almost like this Greek kind of almost mythos to them. The islands and what are all those islands off the coast of Greece called? But just the Aegean Sea, like that kind of stuff. And but it's a really catchy song. It's kind of got these synths that are a little bit sweet. To me, the music and the lyrics are just so singularly that band that you're kind of like, you never get sick of the music. And it opens up with La Futura, which kind of has these, like, it's almost like it's a vocal sample that's been like stretched out, and then it just hits you with these big driving guitars. There's a lot of energy. There's a real like call to action feel to this music. You've got Deep Surround, which was kind of a single. I think they had a video for that. Again, just a pretty great rocker. A great song off this album too, which is more of a ballad, is called Please Believe, which is more of an acoustic, or more of just kind of a laid back mid-tempo, kind of more of a reflective track. To me, a lot of this music reminds me of like landscapes and such, and to me, Please Believe reminds me of like a sunset, where you're just sitting and really being mindful of all that's happening around you. But I think it's basically kind of a confessionary song, like saying, I apologize for what I've done. Please believe that I never meant to hurt you. Please believe that I've never meant to desert you. And basically accepting the past for what it is, but realizing there's opportunities and there's grace involved. And Fold Zandura is a Christian band. I mean, there is a song here called Jesus Eternal. So they are a Christian band that are ultimately talking about the things of God. But musically, and that's, I don't think there needs to be any like qualification to that. I think they are at that time they were very transparent on what they were about. They would say their music is Christian music, being that they were Christians. I do want to point people to the podcast called The Rumors Are True. He does an interview on that podcast, Gyro. This was in last year, 25. And he kind of walked through his career, how he got started, his earlier projects, how he got into Mortal, Fold Zandura, and then all the stuff he did after. And he's got he seems like a pretty humble dude who's just, kind of looking back on his life and, understanding what kind of music he's done. And I think Ultra Forever for me is like in my top, like my all-time albums that I listen to. To me, Fold Zandura is right up there in that list, because I've listened to it so many times. The songs are just so good, and I just love the feel of them. So, one other project I want to bring up too is a band. It's a short-lived project called Lucena, Lucena or LCNA, and I believe Lucena is a city in the Philippines. And both Gyro and Jerome were actually born in the Philippines, and then they moved over to the Americas. So it's what I like about Fold Zandura, and it's even more kind of spacey and cryptic. So I recommend you listen to this band, especially Ultra Forever. My recommendation for track picks would be Stormy Hill, Please Believe, and I would personally put a song called Everything in Revenger. You get a lot of that pop sensibility. You get a lot of the kind of the reflective lyrics. And I would also probably put a song called Starwood, because to me that's like a shoegaze song as good as like almost slow dive material. They were talking like Allison. It's got that same feel for me. This was an album that was probably shoegaze before I even knew what shoegaze was. Just these real spacey, languid guitars. I love it. And this album was produced by Gene Eugene of just music fame. I was going to say Christian rock fame, but I'm just going to say music fame, because this guy had his hands on so many albums and helped shape the sound of this band. I mean, I can imagine this album, you listen to Gyro's and company's music throughout the years, and you can tell they've got this style of songwriting. Even Mortal and Fold, there's kind of this through line in some way. But I feel like Gene Eugene, this Ultra Forever album, to me, which is a perfect album, I feel like it could sound very different if you had somebody else at the helm. Gene Eugene had such a great way of seeing what the track was, adding the right touch, and making it, he just kind of had some magic to him to where he could just make the song just breathe and really be something special. And I know that's very amorphous, that's not specific, but this album I would think would be less if Gene was not producing. So, also interesting to note, Fold Zandura's, the song Stormy Hill, does have some tag vocals by Julie Martin, wife of Jason Martin's wife of Starflyer 59 fame. So they were some pretty close. There was a whole scene of this music, especially in the early 90s to mid 90s, of kind of just Southern California bands making this Christian music, Tooth and Nail, all these bands, Mike Knott, all these guys together. So Fold Zandura is one part of that story, and it was cool to see them perform. They've done a few. They've kind of come back under the brand Morzan. It's called More for Mortal, Zan for Zandura, and it's kind of like this all-encompassing banner of all the history those guys have had together. So Jerome is back in as Morzan, and I think Morzan is going to put some music out. They put out a reworking of a song called "The Fisherman," which was a track on one of their Mortal albums. But I think that Gyro is doing some other side projects. He's put out some tracks. He's got all these different bands going, and I think he's really just working on making different types of music under different banners. So supposedly that's going to be coming out. I would say check his Instagram page. I'm not much of an Instagram guy, but I happened to log into my account, and I had followed Gyro. And recently he said, yeah, there's singles coming out. So I recommend you check that out. And if anything, listen to Ultra Forever. Just pull it up on YouTube or pull out your CD, hit play, and let it run, because it's a really great ride of an album. Great songwriting, offbeat, and yet it's just an album that really resonates with me, and it's one of those albums that's stayed with me a long time. So this was the epitome of a road ramble. So thanks for listening. We will catch you on the next one, and have a good day.